Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here for Pinkfresh Studio. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing 2 cards that feature the brand new Classic Correspondence product suite. Today I am using the press plate to do some foiling, but I did want to let you know that these same images are available in a stamp set. So I love this because it features this adorable envelope, some postage stamps, an ink jar, as well as a fountain ink pen, a journal, some scissors, but there's also some fabulous sentiments in here, including "you're a first-class friend," "happy mail," and those sorts of things. So this is also available in a press plate to use with your Better Press letterpress system or with your hot foil system. And then of course there is the coordinating one piece and sentiment die set, as well as a layering stencil set that I'm going to be using today to show you how to kind of mask off various areas easily to add lots of different colors to a single stencil. So I'm starting out with my Glimmer hot foil system, and I have it preheated here. I have a panel of white cardstock that's cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And then I have a panel of my favorite gold foil, which is the Champagne Glimmer foil. I'm adding my foil to the cardstock with the dull side or the not pretty side facing the paper. And then I'm adding my press plate with the design side facing down towards all of the foil and the paper. I'm just making sure that I have this centered up on this panel of cardstock. I usually use a piece of cardstock that's a little bit larger to make it easier to not have to line it up on a small panel. But today I'm using A2 size panels just to show you this can be done. So I place that with the back side of the press plate onto the platform of the Glimmer hot foil system, and I press the timer button. I do have my thin shim and my spacer pad on top of this sandwich, and once the timer was complete, I removed the platform from the base of the Glimmer hot foil system and ran that entire thing through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine to apply pressure to this sandwich. So now it's time for the peel and reveal, and you can see I have perfectly foiled images. I love all of these adorable stationery themed items. There's so many fun things you can use these for. And I did repeat that process a couple of times because I wanted 3 of these envelopes. While I have my Glimmer hot foil platform out and heated, I'm going to foil a few of these sentiments. I used one of them today, but the other 2 I can keep on hand for future projects. So I'm following the same pattern here. I'm laying my press plates onto the Glimmer hot foil system, pressing the timer button, allowing that timer to kind of run its course. Then I am adding my foil with the pretty side facing the pretty side of my press plates, and then I have my white cardstock on top. I will add my thin shim and my spacer pad, and then I'm going to run this all through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine to add the pressure. Now this is the way I usually foil. I usually prefer to kind of create the sandwich on the platform of the die cutting machine, but you can see it works beautifully both ways. And now I have some beautiful foiled sentiments ready to go. It's time now to add some color to these beautiful images, and so I have a sticky mat here on my work surface, and I have the coordinating stencil set. I'm going to line these up, and then I'm going to start ink blending. Now, I have a couple of tips for adding different colors of ink over the same stencil. So if you want to create different colored images, but they're all on one stencil, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can mask this off with some tape, but you can see here, I'm just grabbing one of the other stencils in the set with a lot of solid area and using the edge of that to mask off the images below. Something else I find really helpful when I'm adding multiple colors of ink onto the same stencil in various areas is using different size blending brushes. So when I'm working on these smaller areas, I am going to use a smaller blending brush, especially if these areas are far enough away from another image that I can just use that small blending brush and I don't have to worry about that ink going into areas that I don't want it. Using these smaller ink blending brushes can prevent me from having to do any masking at all because I have a lot of control over where the ink is going. On a larger image like this envelope, I prefer to use a larger blending brush because I'm covering a lot more real estate in a shorter amount of time. So in this case, I just grabbed another stencil and masked off the area that I needed. Now, keep in mind, this Classic Correspondence is kind of built on a grid. So the straight lines of the edges of the stencil work really well in this case, but you may have some curved edges like on florals or something like that. You can always use Post-it notes or old computer paper, some scrap paper that you may have on hand, and kind of rip that into the shape that you need it and just hold it in place as you're stenciling over various areas. So I'm working my way through these stencils. I'm actually going in order for all of these, but you can see on each stencil, I'm using multiple colors of ink. This just allows for a little more personalization and a little more customization. So keep in mind that this is something that you can do with any of the stencil sets that you have. I'm going to continue working my way through these stencils in order. I'm using a variety of colors of inks. The pinks that I'm using are actually from 3 different pink color families. I'm using Ballet Slipper, I'm using Coral, Reef, and I'm using Peony. Keep in mind, you can always mix colors from different color families to create different looks as well. I also wanted to mention that all of the colors and all the products that I'm using in today's project are listed and linked in the YouTube description below. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. I think you'll find that a great resource to kind of figure out which colors I'm using throughout this process. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention is that I have foiled these images 3 times, but I am only doing ink blending on a full set of images on this first set. On the other images, I'm only going to ink blend the envelopes. And then I will save the other images for future projects. And because I don't know what colors I may want those images to be blended in, I have left them without any ink at all. And I'm going to show you how I kind of kept that attached to the paper to make lining these up with the stencil in the future a little bit easier. Now, this last stencil has very few areas. I'm using mint ink and a small ink blending brush to get into those small openings. And once I'm finished blending all of these images on this first set, I am going to remove this from the sticky mat. Now, something I like to do when I'm removing these images from a sticky mat is I like to actually pick up the mat and roll the mat away from the cardstock. That kind of keeps the cardstock from curling and bending and allows my images to stay kind of straight and pristine and easy to die cut. Now I have the one-piece coordinating die and I'm lining that up over these ink blended images. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. You can hold that in place using some repositionable tape if you want to. I like to kind of ensure that my die is going to stay in place as I'm running it through my die cut machine. And you can see all of these pop out and die cut beautifully. And now I have a lot of images that I can use on my cards. Now for the next images, you can see I have just the envelopes ink blended on those 2 additional sets of images. And I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of partial die cutting. I'm lining up the one-piece die over all of the images, but I'm only going to cover the area that will die cut the envelope. So I'm using a smaller plate here just to cover that envelope area, and then I will send this through my die cut machine. That's going to allow me to keep all of the other images attached to this panel of cardstock so that if I want to go back and stencil them later on, it's easy to do. And it gives me a perfect die cut envelope. Many die cut machines have smaller plates available, but if you don't have a smaller die cut plate available for your machine, this envelope is really easy to trim out with your scissors. So now I have my 3 envelopes, which is how I envisioned this card project going. And I'm going to kind of start arranging them on my work surface, just kind of creating a little kind of grouping of elements that I really like. And then I'm going to use the coordinating sentiment dies from the Classic Correspondence die set. I'm going to line those up over my foiled sentiments and run that through my die cut machine so that I have all of my sentiments ready to go. And I decided that this adorable little happy mail image or sentiment was perfect for this grouping. Now, once I have this grouping in a fashion that I like, sometimes I feel like I'm not going to be able to recreate that again. So I will use some repositionable tape or even like a see-through sticky mat to pick up all of these images at once and keep them in this arrangement that I'm liking. So you can see I'm just using repositionable tape here. I'm placing it over the bulk of the images and then I'm able to pick these up and move them in one grouping. Now, if you know anything about me, you know I love to add random little sprigs of foliage to my die cut element designs. And so I'm using the brand new Fresh Florals die set. This is actually part of a die and stencil set that combines together to create some beautiful ink blended die cut images with that detail that's added from the die. But right now I'm just using them with some vellum to die cut some of these foliage elements, and I'm going to work those into my arrangement. You can see I am repositioning a couple of these elements to kind of make them fit better onto my A2 size card front. I also have the new basket weave cover plate die that I'll be using to add some texture to my card front. Now, while these are all kind of held together by that repositionable tape, I'm going to add foam adhesive to the back, and I'm going to kind of attach these all together from the back side. Then I can flip this over and remove that repositionable tape and add a couple more of the elements that were not kind of showing or visible from the back side, like this pin here. And I did add these using foam adhesive as well. I'll also add my additional postage stamp on that left-hand side, as well as the Happy Mail greeting, and I'm going to add that with foam adhesive here in just a moment. Now, I did remove parts of the backers from the foam adhesive on the back side of this so I could add my vellum foliage elements. So I now have some exposed adhesive on the back, and I can look at this from the front side and place these little leaf images where I want them. And you can see I'm finishing this grouping off by adding my Happy Mail foiled sentiment using a little bit of foam adhesive. Now, once I'm happy with my grouping, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the additional elements of my card. Now, originally, I thought I would put this on a craft card base. So I cut a piece of cardstock to 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and I scored it at 4.25, and I reinforced my score line using my bone folder. I then opened up the card base and I grabbed this basket weave cover plate die and I placed it over one side of this card base and ran that through my die cut machine. That is going to allow me to add texture onto the card base. Because this cover plate die is designed with no outer cutting edge, that means you can use this on a card base. Now, I decided that I actually wanted to kind of layer this up and add another layer of white cardstock behind it. So I did trim this down and then added my elements on top of it using that foam adhesive that I had already placed. And then I added this entire card front onto an ivory card base using some more foam adhesive. You can see here that sometimes it takes me a minute to get my things into the perfect positioning, but then eventually I kind of have to make a decision and just press it down. So here's that ivory card base. Again, a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches. I'm scoring at 4.25 and then folding on that score line, reinforcing that to create a nice clean fold line, and then placing this entire card front onto that ivory card base using a layer of foam adhesive. Now, every card needs a little sparkle, and we have the foil, but I decided to bring in the gold metallic pearls from Pinkfresh Studio and place a few of those on my card front scattered about. I'm using my dual tip embellishment tool and some liquid glue to place these. I like to call my dual tip embellishment tool my magic wand because it just makes placing small die cut elements or embellishments onto my card so much easier. And that's magic to me. Now, I love card number 1, and I decided I just couldn't let those other elements go to waste. So I used the brand new double stitch oval dies. This is from the Essentials collection from Pinkfresh Studio. And I arranged these additional elements and placed them using foam adhesive onto that oval die cut layer. You can see I have them all arranged. I picked them up with that repositionable adhesive. I stamped a sentiment from the Classic Correspondence stamp set onto some pink cardstock using some Coral Reef ink and placed that over those elements in that upper left-hand corner. Then I positioned this oval onto a 4-bar note card. So this measures 4 7/8 by 3.5 inches, and it's kind of a fun mini note card size. I then finished this off with a few of those metallic gold pearls as well, placing them with, again, my magic wand. So when I set out to create my card, I hadn't envisioned that I would create a couple of cards today, but there was a bonus card in there. This cute little mini 4-bar note card uses all of those additional elements that I didn't use in the first card. And I think this 4-bar note card size is really underrated. And then of course, the original card that I set out to create with a few of those envelopes from that Classic Correspondence set. I love the way these turned out. This is such a fun kind of vintage throwback, kind of a carte postale theme, and I absolutely love it. Be sure to let me know in the comments below which of these 2 cards is your favorite from today. Do you like this heavy on the envelope theme, or do you like the mini 4-bar note card using all the leftovers? I'd love to hear what you think. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube, so if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these card projects, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of the card making, paper crafting, and live stream tutorials shared here. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.